Hi, I'm Grayson with Lost Highway Kennels.
And I'm Emily with Shorthairs and Shotguns, and this is our companion Gundog training channel.
Hey guys, this is a follow-up video to our Developing the National Retrieve that we did with Max. If you haven't seen that, please check out the link in the description. Essentially, all of the dogs we've worked with today have been collar conditioned to recall and have some level of place training. That said, all of them have different issues that we need to focus on. So you're going to get a little something, hopefully, from each individual dog as we go along. The emphasis is going to be on structured play and doing our best to kind of increase our criteria as we move forward in forming rules around our national retrieve. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so we just had Kimber out. You saw, I was just assessing Kimber for his retrieve desire, right? So if he would chase, capture, possess, he showed a little bit of interest at first. He didn't show much, and we were actually gonna kind of get a baseline video to see if we brought a younger pup out that we already knew was enthusiastic and was into the chase, capture, and possess, that maybe we'd give Kimber a little bit of competition. But what we found while I was working on it is if I could keep him busy, that Kimber began to show a little more interest in either one of the bumpers we had. One was a little more satisfying than the other to him at first. He began to kind of pick up and carry, and I immediately went into a drill I call, or that's known widely as two ball. So what happens, he goes out, he makes a retrieve, he chases and captures and begins to possess, and then I show him I have another toy. If he shows interest in that and makes action in my direction, then I can reward that by animating the other toy. So that's what we did. And what I'll do is I'll hopefully, kind of through successive approximation, get that dog to make a little more progress in my direction each time, and hopefully begin to hold and carry that around while it engages me and solicits me to throw that other ball. So that's the long-term goal with that. Another thing we can do in developing the national retrieve, we are using, positive reinforcement to kind of push the criteria along, but we're still kind of using what's given to the dog naturally to make that happen. So that was Kimber. Yes. Go. Good. Let's go. Good girl. Here. Good. So we just had Harley out, who's a young short hair that's here on a companion gun dog program. She's relatively young, but we have started collar conditioning her, so she has a relatively strong recall, as we've talked about in the past with other dogs, and we've begun place board work. So one thing about Harley, though, is that she had kind of borderline ball drop. She has a ton of chase, ton of capture. She's not quite as possessive as other dogs, especially and she feels conflict between she and I, which kind of devalues the bumper. So the bumper at first comes out maybe of high value, or she may show little interest in it. And all I want to do is keep the sessions very short. Like the retriever guys talk about, only giving 3 retrieves maybe in one session. I'm guilty of going beyond that often, but with her, you'll notice the very first mark I throw is going to be very short. It's going to be very animated and hoppy, and I'm going to engage her at the place board to try and get her excited. So I want to give that bumper as much value as I can early. She engages me over it. She comes back. She possesses. That's great. The second one's a little longer, still very animated, very similar. And then the third one, you'll notice we go very long. It tends to stretch her out a bit, and on the way back, she begins to feel that conflict. She lays down. She begins to possess on her own. I give her a here, which is going to kind of lean on the power of that collar conditioning that we've used earlier. It does bring her to me, but you'll notice it's not without conflict. So that's what's going on with Harley. She's willing to go get it. She's willing to start back to me, but we're starting to have some of her desire to possess the bumper coupled with a little bit of a lack of desire to really possess that in a way that she'll come and engage with me over, even if she's compelled to. And we're kind of overcoming that with the recall and the place command that already exists, and keeping things fun and light, and keeping it short, and putting her up when we've got more.
Are you using the e-collar for recall?
I'm not while we're playing over the bumper. So the recall, I want to reinforce with the collar as much as possible the recall around this game. But when this game is happening, I'm not using the collar. Especially if I ever have a bumper in that dog's mouth, I'm not going to be giving them any sort of collar pressure or otherwise.
If she does not come back to you from laying down, what would you do?
The first action I would make is away from her with my body. I would try to induce her to come to me by just taking the game somewhere else. I might use the second bumper and try to get some 2-ball going. At that point, if she begins to feel so much conflict over coming to me and possessing her bumper, at the end of the day, I'm just not going to fight it. I'll end the session how I can. What I'm not going to do is chase her down with the bumper, but if she chooses to leave it, I'm going to make her make a choice to either bring that bumper to me or leave that bumper, but never under the force of compulsion. Most times, she's going to either walk with me, or she's going to pick up that bumper and come, or she's going to engage me with the second ball or bumper. If I exhaust all of that stuff, then we just do the best we can and let her exhaust herself and wear out her desire to sit there with that bumper. Eventually, though, I'm going to make her make the decision to bring that bumper to me or to walk away from it entirely, and we'll start over the next time. And we know that that's a limit that we pushed and we didn't land, but that's okay. We can come back, set our criteria a little lower the next time, and go beyond that. Ball. Nice. Hey. Yep. Ball. Hey. Wait. Come on. our next dog is a young poodle pointer, a big enthusiastic poodle pointer named Artis. It's another client dog that's here with us. Artis has a ton of chase, a ton of capture, a ton of possess. He's still early in the wanting to engage me over the item. He has a little bit, he likes to tug and things like that. I'm not directly attacking his desire to tug and to chew on that bumper. It's going to be all indirect by killing the prey, and that's something you'll notice in there. It just means I'm simply going to hold it still, let him disengage if he wants that item to reanimate. The idea with Artis right now is to introduce the place board as a part of the entire game. So right now, whether Artis brings the bumper to me or not is much less important than he gets on the place board to initiate the sequence. So I'm actually reinforcing the place command with the bumper. You'll notice he's wearing a collar. He's another dog that has been collar conditioned, but right now it's completely out of play. And what I want is for Artis to present himself to me on this place board, sit there nicely, and when you'll hear me mark with the word yes and throw that bumper, I'm trying to mark the behavior of get on the place board, sit and wait for your mark. And what we'll do is we'll extend that. We'll begin to use that in steadiness later. And then when the place board begins to carry the power of really attracting Artis, we'll begin to incorporate that hopefully more into, hey, make it to your target, which is the place board, and then I'll meet you there to engage that over that bumper. Whew. Yes. Right. So we just filmed our second session with Kimber, and we made a lot of progress from the first. We continued the game of 2-ball, but this time you'll notice a couple of instances where Kimber comes back and exchanges the first bumper without dropping it, and I reanimate the bumper he brought. And so now, hopefully we'll reinforce the game with one prey item, which will be that one bumper. He's beginning to think about presenting, and what you'll notice is how I receive the bumper from Kimber. He wants to play, and he wants to engage over it with it being in my hand. Instead of playing a game of tug of war with him, or instead of forcing him to drop or holding on to him, I just simply hang on to the bumper and I kill the prey. And I don't, with no cues, I allow Kimber to make the decision to release, and once he does, I re-engage. And hopefully what happens is now I get to reinforce that drop or that give or that release or that out or whatever you choose to call it. Killing prey, he lets go. As soon as he does, I can mark with a yes, which you'll probably hear me do as a force of habit. Yes, reanimate. That's it becomes a feedback loop and of self-reinforcing behaviors or reinforcing behaviors within that retrieve. And so Now what we get is, you'll notice me constantly moving away from him, him wanting to begin to solicit me with the bumper, chase me around, hey, please play this game with me again. We manage to engage over it within his mouth and in my hands. I kill prey, he releases, we start the whole thing over again. And as we continue to progress with that, it should become more and more clean as I begin to narrow the criteria.
Yes. Good girl. Okay. That a girl. There you go. Good. Good. Here. Good girl. Good girl. That's fine. Okay. Good.
All right, guys, so we just finished with Harley, the young short hair, that, if you'll recall the last session, we said she had borderline ball drive, she had the desire to capture, and somewhat possess, but not a lot. And so we brought her out today, and the very first thing I did, because I wanted to really build the draw of the placeboard, the pull, I went out there and I just did a session of a little bit of recall with some placeboard, just enforcing, once you've been there, stay on, and making some momentum to the placeboard. And then I put her up. I put her up and I worked another dog, and I gave her enough time to kind of ritualize the beginning and the end of a session, and hopefully when I pull her out again, the lessons that we worked on in that previous session are still kind of fresh in her memory, and we're ritualizing the beginning to another Completely different setup this time. No compulsion with the collar, but just play. And it's something I think that's important to emphasize, is that really all we're doing when we're doing this natural retrieve, or when we're doing whatever possible to encourage a clean natural retrieve, it's really structured play. And I have an objective, and I increase the level of criteria accordingly as I get closer to that objective. So I came out the last time, I had to give value to the bumper by keeping it short and fast. You'll notice I bring her out today, and you may see her looking distracted early. And I try to pick up a little bit further than where I began last time, and I throw a bumper that was a little bit long, and you could see that she just wasn't super into it. So as soon as she came back, I animate the bumper. I bring her to the place board, and I get it going very fast, what we may call throwing a rabbit. Bounces, gets her engaged and excited, and then you'll see everything from that point on is structured play. I'm satisfying a desire that I'm building. So at the same time that I'm having fun playing with her over this bumper, I'm trying to build her desire to chase this bumper, and I'm adding value to the bumper as best I can. And if she goes somewhere else, I try to break her engagement with the distractions of the world around her, of the immediate environment, by just kind of recalling her back and then not reinforcing that in any way by giving her too much attention. And as soon as she pays attention to that bumper again, I'm trying my best to add value to it again. So that's the idea of what we're doing in this game. It may sound a little bit confusing, but it's not just going out and winging the bumper. Sometimes that's not enough for the dog. Sometimes you have to do everything you can without the use of compulsion to make this bumper become something of high value. And if we want it to be good enough to be a baseline. Now, she is the type of dog that it may make sense for me to drop down to something a little more satiating, a tennis ball or something like that. But right now I'm getting just enough out of her to keep her interested and to keep me engaged with this item. So we're gonna keep trying with her. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. And I think by the end of that session, we're starting to begin to come to an understanding. So we'll keep working with her, and we'll keep you updated.
Good boy. Great. Great boy. Yes. Shadow. Nope. Here. 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 Right. No. Good. Yes. Shadow. Right. Good boy. Here. Right. Good boy. Right. There you here. Right. Nope. Yes, got a ball. Got a ball. Okay. Yo. Good boy. Yo. Hey. Here. Nope. Here. Good. Yes. Good boy. Here. Good.
All right, and today we also worked artists. I've been working artists separately in obedience. We've done some place command. He's very, far along in his recall and his place. And today was kind of the first day I wanted to bring those together. As you'll recall, last time I was really trying to get an inducive place going, and that was really the only criteria we were working on. It wasn't really anything to do with his retrieve. I wasn't asking for any sort of formal presentation from artists. Today I wanted to see a little bit more of that. I was going to hope for a little more discipline in his return with the toy. He wants to engage over, and I like that. But I also want to not let that get out of control. Artist is the type of dog that will animate the object with you to satiate his own desire to kill prey. And so you have to be careful when you're playing the kill prey game with Artist, because he'll take advantage of that and begin to satisfy himself by reanimating the item on his own. So I want to try to put some rules to that, but I have to be very careful. And you'll notice I come out and I try to do a very structured game with Artist at first, and he loses interest because of the structure. It creates a little bit of conflict and he wanders off. At that point, I break it down and we turn it into that structured play game with a heavy emphasis on play. And I'm always still trying to maintain the rules, but I had to back off a little bit. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes we take a step too far with structure, and the dogs aren't quite ready for that. This is not a disciplinary activity yet. He's got to want to do it. And so it's my job to keep him wanting to do it. And so when you'll see, hopefully you'll see in the video, he loses interest, he gets conflicted, he maybe even becomes a little bit avoidant because of that. And at that point, we break it down, we make it fun again, but I try to keep my criteria just a little bit higher than it was last time. And I think we accomplished that, but it's something to remember, guys. Sometimes you're taking, you're looking to make that next step and it doesn't work out. There's no problem with falling back and starting where, going back to the beginning. Whatever it takes to keep the value in the toy, keep the dog engaged and wanting to do it. When the time comes for discipline, we'll employ it. But for now, we want this dog to start building good habits based on his desire to play the game with us.